No one dared to talk back to the millionaire boss until his new cleaning lady made him eat his words. Before we begin, tell us in the comments what is the bravest thing you've ever done at work, and at the end of the story, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Enjoy. The 50th floor of the Sterling Enterprises Tower was less of an office and more of a temple, dedicated to the god of terrified silence, and its high priest was Julian Sterling. At 42, Julian had a reputation carved from granite and ice. He didn't run his multi-billion-dollar real estate empire. He commanded it. His meetings were legendary for their brutal efficiency, where a single misplaced word or a poorly formatted chart could result in a cold, quiet dismissal. He moved through the hallways like a shark, and his employees were the terrified fish who scattered in his wake. His philosophy was simple. Emotion was a weakness, questions were a form of insubordination, and the cleaning staff were meant to be invisible. This was a lesson the night crew knew all too well. They had a silent, unwritten rule. If you saw Mr. Sterling working late, you did not enter his office. You did not make a sound. You became a ghost, finishing your duties and disappearing before he even registered your presence. All of them followed this rule. All of them, except for the new girl. Her name was Maya. She was 28, with warm, intelligent eyes that missed nothing, and a quiet energy that was more like a steady flame than a flickering candle. She had been working at Sterling Enterprises for exactly 1 week, and she had already concluded that the company's biggest liability wasn't in its stock portfolio. It was the suffocating fear emanating from the CEO's office. The confrontation, when it came, was not something anyone could have predicted. It was a Wednesday night, and Julian was in a foul mood. A massive deal in Dubai had hit a snag, and he had been on a series of brutal conference calls for hours. He was standing in his vast glass-walled office, staring out at the glittering lights of the city, when Maya quietly pushed her cleaning cart to his doorway. She knocked softly on the doorframe. Julian didn't turn. "What?" he snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Excuse me, Mr. Sterling," Maya said, her voice calm and clear, betraying none of the nervousness the other cleaners would have shown. "I just need to empty the trash." He turned slowly, his eyes narrowing. "I'm working. Come back later." "With all due respect, sir," she replied, not backing down, "my shift ends in 15 minutes. If I come back later, it will be on my own time. I'm sure a man who values efficiency as much as you do can appreciate that." The sheer, unadulterated audacity of her response left him momentarily speechless. No one, not even his most senior vice presidents, spoke to him with such direct, logical defiance. He was about to tell her to get out and not come back, but something in her steady, unapologetic gaze stopped him. "Fine," he bit out. "Be quick and be quiet." Maya nodded and efficiently went about her work. She emptied the wastebasket, wiped down a side table, and was about to leave when she noticed the whiteboard behind his desk. It was covered in a frantic, chaotic web of numbers, arrows, and architectural sketches related to the Dubai deal. She paused for a second, her head tilted, studying the board. Julian, who had turned his back to her, was on the phone with his lead architect. "No, David, that's not a solution," he was saying, his frustration evident. "Moving the support column will compromise the entire atrium design. We need to find a way to maintain the aesthetic without sacrificing structural integrity. It's impossible." "It's not impossible?" a quiet voice said from behind him. Julian froze. He slowly turned around. Maya was standing there, looking at his whiteboard with a focused intensity. "Excuse me?" he said, his voice dangerously low. She seemed to realize she had spoken her thoughts aloud, and a faint blush rose on her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I shouldn't have. I saw the plans." "You saw the plans," he repeated, his voice dripping with sarcasm as he ended his phone call. "And what? You, the cleaning lady, have a solution that my entire team of MIT-educated architects couldn't find." The old fear, the instinct to apologize and shrink away, flickered in Maya's eyes. But then she looked at the whiteboard again, at the flawed logic of the design, and her passion for structure, for making things right, overrode her fear. "Yes," she said, her voice gaining strength, "I think I do." He let out a short, incredulous laugh. This was too absurd. He was stressed, exhausted, and now he was being lectured on architectural design by the cleaning staff. In a moment of pure, arrogant frustration, he grabbed a marker from the tray and tossed it to her. "All right, genius," he said with a cruel smirk, gesturing to the board. "Go on, dazzle me. Show me the solution. If you can fix this, I'll give you my position as CEO." He was joking, of course. It was a rhetorical flourish meant to humiliate her, to put her back in her place. He expected her to stammer, to apologize, to flee the room in embarrassment. She did not. Maya caught the marker with a surprising one-handed grace. She walked up to the whiteboard, her expression now completely transformed. The quiet, unassuming cleaner was gone. In her place was a woman of intense, focused confidence. She didn't say a word. She just uncapped the marker and began to draw. Her hand moved with a speed and precision that was breathtaking. She didn't erase his team's work. She drew over it, in red, creating new lines, new angles. She sketched a complex system of cantilevered beams and a tension ring structure, a solution that was both elegant and structurally brilliant. It didn't just solve the support column problem. It enhanced the entire aesthetic of the atrium, making it more open, more dynamic. The entire drawing took her less than 2 minutes. When she was finished, she stepped back from the board, capped the marker, and placed it neatly back in the tray. She looked at the revised design, then at the stunned, silent man in front of her. "There," she said, her voice quiet but ringing with an unshakable authority. "You maintain the aesthetic, you increase the structural integrity by 15%, and you actually save on material costs. It's not impossible. You were just looking at the problem from the wrong angle." Julian stared at the whiteboard, his mind struggling to catch up with what he was seeing. The solution was perfect. It was elegant, innovative, and so blindingly obvious now that she had drawn it that he felt a wave of shame for not having seen it himself. He looked from the board to her, at her simple gray uniform, at the faint smudge of dust on her cheek. "Who?" he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Are you?" Maya allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. "I'm the person who just saved your Dubai deal," she said. "And for the record, I don't want your CEO position, but a raise would be nice." She picked up her cleaning cart, and with her head held high, she walked out of his office, leaving Julian Sterling standing alone in the deafening silence, completely and utterly speechless. For the first time in his life, Julian Sterling did not sleep. He spent the entire night in his office, not working, but staring at the whiteboard. He had his top structural engineer, a man with a 30-year career and a reputation for brilliance, come in at 3 a.m. to verify the drawing. The engineer, a man named Frank, stared at the board for a solid 10 minutes, his expression shifting from skepticism to disbelief to pure, unadulterated awe. "My God," Frank whispered, tracing Maya's lines in the air. "This is revolutionary. The way she's distributed the load through the tension ring, it's a work of art. I've never seen anything like it. Who drew this? Was it the new team from Berlin?" "It was the night janitor," Julian said, the words feeling absurd even as he said them. Frank just stared at him. The next morning, Julian was a man on a mission. He had the HR file on Maya on his desk by 7 a.m. It was, as he expected, completely unhelpful. It listed a high school diploma, a series of low-wage service jobs, and an address in one of the city's poorest neighborhoods. There was nothing to explain how a woman with her background could possess the architectural knowledge of a seasoned master. He knew he couldn't just ask her, not after the way he had treated her. He had humiliated her, mocked her, and she had responded with a quiet, devastating competence that had completely dismantled his worldview. He needed to understand. He did something he had never done before. He left his tower and drove to her neighborhood. It was a world away from his manicured life of private clubs and high-rise penthouses. It was a place of vibrant murals, of music spilling from open windows, of a raw, resilient energy that he found both intimidating and strangely compelling. He found her apartment building, a modest walk-up with a fire escape that was decorated with potted plants. He didn't go up. He just sat in his car across the street, watching, feeling like a spy in a foreign land. He saw her leave for her shift, not in her cleaning uniform, but in jeans and a t-shirt, a large, worn-out sketchbook tucked under her arm. Instead of following her, he did something else. He walked into the small neighborhood library at the end of her block. "Excuse me," he said to the elderly librarian at the front desk. "I'm doing some research. I was wondering if you knew a young woman who comes here often. Her name is Maya." The librarian's face lit up. "Maya? Of course, we know Maya. She's our star pupil." "Pupil?" "She's been coming here since she was a little girl," the librarian explained, her voice full of warmth. "She practically taught herself to read in that corner right there, devoured every book we had on art, on history, on everything. But her passion was always architecture. Our architecture section is small, but I think she has every single book memorized." She led him to a small, dusty section at the back of the library. "She would sit here for hours," the librarian continued, "copying blueprints, sketching her own designs. She told me she dreamed of being an architect, of building beautiful, functional spaces for people who didn't have them." "What happened?" Julian asked, his throat tight. The librarian's smile faded. "Life, I suppose. Her father got sick. She had to leave school to take care of him, to work and pay the bills. But she never stopped learning. She's the most brilliant mind I've ever known. A true artist, trapped by circumstance." He left the library with the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. She wasn't just a cleaner who was good at drawing. She was a self-taught architectural genius who had sacrificed her own dreams for her family. He went back to his office a different man. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a profound, humbling respect. He looked at his own life, at the opportunities he had been given, the doors that had been opened for him simply because of his name, and he felt a deep, burning shame. He knew what he had to do. An apology wasn't enough. A raise wasn't enough. He had to give her what the world had denied her, a chance. That evening, he was waiting for her when she arrived for her shift. He met her in the lobby, not as a CEO, but as a man with a proposition. "Maya," he began, his voice steady. "I know about your dream." She froze, her sketchbook clutched to her chest. "What are you talking about?" "I know you're an architect," he said simply. "A brilliant one. And I was a blind, arrogant fool for not seeing it." He took a deep breath. "I am dissolving the in-house design team for the Dubai project." Her eyes widened. "What? Why? You can't do that. People will lose their jobs." "No," he corrected. "I'm reassigning them, because I'm putting a new architect in charge of the entire project." He looked her straight in the eye. "You?" She stared at him, speechless. "Me, Julian, that's insane. I don't have a degree. I don't have a license." "You have something more important," he said. "You have vision. You have a talent that can't be taught in a classroom. We'll hire the technical people, the engineers, the licensed professionals to execute your vision. But the vision, that has to be yours." I can't," she stammered, overwhelmed. "Yes, you can," he insisted, his voice full of a conviction that was absolute. "You've been preparing for this your whole life, in the margins, in the libraries, in the quiet moments when no one was watching. I'm not giving you a gift, Maya. I'm just finally opening the door that should have been open for you all along." She looked at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, and for the first time in a very long time, she allowed herself to hope. "The job is yours," he said, "with a salary that reflects your talent, not your resume. And your first official task as lead architect," he added, a slow smile spreading across his face, "is to tell me where on earth we're going to put the support columns in that atrium." Walking into the design department of Sterling Enterprises the next Monday was like walking into a lion's den. Maya, dressed in a simple but professional black dress she had bought over the weekend, could feel the eyes on her. They weren't just curious, they were hostile. She was an outsider, an anomaly. The janitor architect and the team of seasoned, degree-holding professionals was not rolling out the welcome mat. The team was led by a man named Marcus Thorne, a talented but arrogant architect who had been the lead on the Dubai project before Maya's sudden, inexplicable promotion. He saw her not as a colleague, but as a personal insult. "So," Marcus began, leaning back in his chair in the first team meeting, his voice dripping with condescension, "you're the one with the vision. We're all very eager to see this revolutionary design you sketched out on a whiteboard." The other 6 members of the team, all men, remained silent, their expressions a mixture of skepticism and resentment. Maya knew this was her first and most important test. She took a deep breath and walked to the front of the room. not with the timid uncertainty of an imposter, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knew her craft. "Thank you, Marcus," she began, her voice calm and even. "I appreciate the introduction. And you're right, the initial sketch was just a concept. The real work begins now, and it's work we will do together." She didn't present herself as their new boss. She presented herself as a collaborator. For the next hour, she didn't just show them her ideas, she asked for theirs. She pointed to a flaw in her own initial sketch and asked the team's structural engineer for a better solution. She admitted she didn't know enough about local Emirati building codes and asked for their expertise. She didn't command, she invited. It was a brilliant strategy. By showing vulnerability and respecting their skills, she slowly began to disarm them. By the end of the meeting, the hostility in the room had lessened, replaced by a grudging curiosity. She hadn't won them over yet, but she had earned a sliver of their attention. Julian watched the entire meeting via a live feed in his office, fascinated. He'd expected her to be intimidated, to struggle. He had been ready to step in and assert her authority for her. But she didn't need him. She was handling the lions on her own, not by roaring louder, but by speaking their language and proving she was one of them, just with a different perspective. Their own interactions settled into a new, complex rhythm. They were now officially colleagues, and they spent hours together, hunched over blueprints and 3D models. The professional barrier was firmly in place, but underneath it, a different kind of connection was growing. He discovered the depth of her knowledge was staggering. She could talk about the history of Gothic architecture, the principles of sustainable design, and the subtle psychological impact of light and space on human emotion. She didn't just design buildings, she designed feelings. She, in turn, discovered a side of him she hadn't expected. He was a ruthless businessman, yes, but he was also a man with a deep, almost obsessive appreciation for beauty and order. He would argue with her for an hour over the precise angle of a window, not for cost reasons, but because he wanted to capture the morning light in a specific way. He wasn't just building a skyscraper, he was composing a symphony of glass and steel. They challenged each other, they argued, they pushed each other to be better. Their creative chemistry was electric, a perfect fusion of his ambitious vision and her human-centric soul. "It needs to be taller," he'd insist, looking at a model of the tower. "A statement, a monument to the future." "It needs to have a soul," she'd counter, adding a small green space, a pocket park on the 30th floor. "A monument is just a block of stone if no one feels welcome inside." He would grumble, but he would almost always, in the end, agree with her. He was learning that a building wasn't just a structure, it was a home for the people who worked within it. The battle in the office, however, was far from over. Marcus Thorne was not a man who gave up easily. He saw Maya as an obstacle to his own ambition, and he began a subtle campaign to undermine her. He would forget to invite her to crucial meetings. He would quietly criticize her designs to other team members, planting seeds of doubt. The situation came to a head with the presentation to the Dubai investors. It was the most important meeting of the project, the one that would secure the final phase of funding. Maya had been working on the presentation for weeks. It was her masterpiece, a beautiful, compelling story of the building, not just as a structure, but as a living, breathing part of the city. The day before the presentation, her entire digital file vanished from the company server. She was in her office, staring at the empty folder on her screen, a cold, sick feeling in the pit of her stomach. Years of her work, her ideas, her chance to finally prove herself, all gone. She knew with a sickening certainty who was behind it, Marcus. But she had no proof. She walked into Julian's office, her face pale. "It's gone," she said, her voice a hollow whisper. "Everything, the presentation, the models, all of it." He saw the look on her face and was on his feet in an instant. The old, cold fury returned to his eyes. "I'll kill him," he growled. "I'll have the IT team run a trace, I'll find the proof, and I will personally ruin him." "No," Maya said, her voice surprisingly firm. He stared at her, confused. "No, Maya, he just sabotaged a billion-dollar project. He tried to destroy you. And if you go after him with lawyers and accusations, it will just be a corporate bloodbath," she said, her mind already working. "It will be his word against mine. The board will be forced to take sides. The project will be delayed for months. It will be chaos. He wants you to react with anger. He wants you to be the ruthless CEO. Don't give him what he wants." "Then what do we do?" he asked, completely lost. "The presentation is in less than 24 hours. We have nothing." She looked at him, and he saw the flame in her eyes reignite. "We have everything we need," she said. "We have the story, and we have a very, very long night ahead of us." What followed was the most intense, exhausting, and strangely exhilarating 18 hours of Julian's life. He canceled all his other appointments. He ordered in enough coffee and food to feed a small army. He and Maya, alone in the vast, silent office, set out to rebuild her entire presentation from scratch. It was a race against time, a marathon of creativity and sheer force of will. He watched, completely in awe, as she worked. She didn't need the digital models. The entire building, every beam, every window, every intricate detail was already built in her mind. She sketched furiously on large sheets of paper, her hands moving with a fluid, confident grace. She dictated technical specifications from memory. She rebuilt the entire narrative of the building, not with flashy graphics, but with simple, powerful words. He was her support team. He found the data she needed, he organized her sketches, he kept her supplied with an endless stream of coffee. He saw not just her genius, but her grit. She never complained. She never faltered. She just worked, fueled by a passion that was as fierce as it was inspiring. At one point, around 4 a.m., she finally stopped, her head slumping onto the table in exhaustion. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You need to rest," he said. "No time," she mumbled into her arms. "The facade, the light patterns, still not right." He pulled up a chair beside her. "Then talk me through it," he said. "Let me be your hands for a while." And so in the quiet, pre-dawn hours, she described her vision, her voice soft and sleepy, and he, the powerful CEO, became the humble draftsman, translating her ideas onto the page. They worked together, their minds in perfect sync, a seamless collaboration that was more intimate than any conversation they had ever had. By the time the sun rose over the city, they had it. A presentation made not of slick digital renderings, but of hand-drawn sketches, of handwritten notes, of a story that was raw, authentic, and 1,000 times more powerful than the original. She looked at the pile of work spread across the conference table, then at him. There was a smudge of charcoal on his cheek, and his hair was a mess. He had never looked more handsome. "We did it," she said, a tired but triumphant smile on her face. "No," he corrected, his eyes full of a profound admiration. "You did it. I just held the pencils." They were standing close, the energy of their shared creation a palpable thing between them. The professional lines were gone, erased by the intimacy of a shared, desperate battle. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, but also the fire. He reached out and gently wiped the smudge of charcoal from his own cheek, where she had inadvertently put it. "You have a little something." Her hand came up to touch her own cheek. "Oh, do I?" Their hands met, his covering hers. The world seemed to narrow to that single point of contact. The city outside, the billion-dollar deal, the looming presentation, it all faded away. There was only the quiet of the room and the soft, warm touch of her skin against his. "Maya," he whispered, his voice rough. He leaned in, and this time there were no interruptions. This time, there was only a slow, gentle kiss that was a culmination of everything that had been building between them. The respect, the admiration, the shared battles, the unspoken longing. It was a kiss that tasted of late-night coffee, of charcoal, and of a future that suddenly felt bright and clear and absolutely inevitable. The morning of the Dubai presentation dawned with a fragile, nervous energy. The kiss had changed everything, creating a beautiful, unspoken current that flowed between them, but it had also raised the stakes. Now, it wasn't just a project on the line, it was a shared, nascent hope for a future they hadn't dared to imagine. They walked into the boardroom side by side, not as boss and employee, but as a unified front, their shared exhaustion from the all-night session hidden behind a mask of professional calm. The Dubai investors were already seated, their expressions impassive. Marcus Thorne was there, a smug, confident look on his face, clearly expecting a spectacular failure. He believed he had erased their work, their chances, their future. He had no idea they had spent the night rebuilding it from the soul outwards. Julian began the meeting, his voice steady. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We've had a last-minute evolution in our design philosophy for this project. We've decided to move away from a purely digital presentation to something more analog, more personal. Because we believe this isn't just a building, it's a story. And our lead architect, Maya Hayes, is here to tell you that story. He stepped aside, giving her the floor. All eyes turned to Maya. She looked at the powerful men in front of her, then glanced at Marcus, who was watching her with a predatory smirk. She didn't falter. She took a deep breath, and she began. She didn't talk about square footage or material costs. She talked about the way the desert light changes at dawn. She used her hand-drawn sketches to show them how the building's glass facade was designed to capture that light, to bring the warmth of the sunrise into every office. She spoke of the central atrium not as a multifunctional common space, but as the beating heart of the building, a place for collaboration and community, inspired by the layout of a traditional Arabian souk. She described the Pocket Park on the 30th floor as a sanctuary, a place for quiet reflection in the middle of a bustling city. She wasn't selling a building, she was selling a dream. A dream of a workplace that was not just efficient but human. As she spoke, Julian watched the faces of the investors. Their impassive masks began to crack. They leaned forward, their eyes engaged. They were captivated, not just by her designs, which were brilliant, but by the passion, the authenticity with which she spoke. Marcus Thorne's smug expression slowly dissolved, replaced by a look of dawning horror. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to be stammering, unprepared, humiliated. Instead, she was holding the entire room in the palm of her hand. When she finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Then, the lead investor, a sheik with a reputation for being one of the most discerning and ruthless businessmen in the world, slowly began to clap. The rest of the room followed, the applause echoing through the conference room. "Miss Hayes," the sheik said, his voice full of a respect that was rarely given. "In my 30 years of business, I have seen hundreds of presentations for skyscrapers. They all speak of steel and glass and profit. You are the first person who has ever spoken to me about the soul of a building." He turned to Julian. "Mr. Sterling, your company has our full and unconditional support. Build us this dream." The deal was not just saved, it was solidified, stronger than ever. As the investors crowded around Maya congratulating her, Julian walked over to a pale but trembling Marcus. "My office." "Now," Julian said, his voice a low, deadly whisper. In the cold, sterile quiet of his office, Julian closed the door. "It was you," he said, the words a statement, not a question. "You deleted the files." Marcus, for the first time in his career, looked truly afraid. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, Marcus," Julian said, his voice dangerously calm. "I have the server logs. I have the access times. I have the proof. The only question I have is why?" Marcus seemed to deflate, the arrogance draining out of him, leaving behind a bitter, resentful shell. "Because it was my project," he spat, his voice shaking with a mixture of anger and self-pity. "I worked on it for a year, and then you brought her in, a janitor, and you just gave it to her. You handed her my legacy." "It was never your legacy, Marcus," Julian said, his voice cutting. "It was just your job. You design buildings. She understands them. There's a difference." He walked over to his desk and pressed a button on his intercom. "Security. We have a situation on the 50th floor." "You can't do this," Marcus pleaded, his face ashen. "I have a family, a reputation." "You should have thought of that," Julian said, his expression like stone, "before you tried to destroy the reputation of an innocent woman and sabotage a billion-dollar deal out of petty jealousy." As security escorted a defeated Marcus out of the office, Julian felt no triumph. Just a profound sense of sadness. He had once been a man not so different from Marcus, a man who valued ambition above all else. Maya had saved him from that path. He found her back in the design department, surrounded by her team who were celebrating their victory. She looked up as he approached, and her smile was the brightest thing in the room. "We did it," she said, her eyes shining. "You did it," he corrected. He waited until the crowd of well-wishers had thinned. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. He led her to his office, the same office where, just 24 hours earlier, they had shared a life-changing kiss. The air was still charged with the memory of it. "Maya," he began, his voice serious. "After what happened today, after what you did, I need to be clear about something." Her heart sank. Was he going to say it was a mistake? That in the light of day, it was all too complicated? "I'm in love with you," he said simply, the words direct and unequivocal. "I'm not confused. I'm not grateful. I'm in love. With your mind, with your courage, with your chaotic, beautiful soul. I love you." Tears of relief and joy welled in her eyes. "I love you too, Julian," she whispered. "I think I have for a while." He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "I know this is complicated. I know there are a million reasons why this shouldn't work. The boss and the employee are different worlds." "I don't care about our different worlds," she interrupted, her voice firm. "I care about the world we can build together." He smiled, a wide, genuine smile that lit up his entire face. "Then let's build it," he said, "starting now." Their first official date as a real couple was that night. He didn't take her to a fancy, Michelin-starred restaurant. He took her to a small, unassuming jazz club he knew, a place with worn wooden floors and a smoky, intimate atmosphere. They sat in a dark corner booth, listening to the music, their hands linked on the table. They talked for hours, not about work, but about their lives, their dreams. He told her about his lonely childhood, about the pressure of being a Sterling. She told him about her father, about his love for art and music, about the sketchbook he had given her just before he died, the one she still carried with her everywhere. "He told me to fill it with beauty," she said, her voice soft with memory. "Even when the world felt ugly." "You've done that," Julian said, his gaze full of a profound tenderness. "You fill every room you enter with beauty." Later, as they walked through the quiet, rain-slicked streets of the city, he stopped under a street lamp. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small flat box from his pocket. It wasn't a ring. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a single, beautiful antique silver pen. "For your sketchbook," he said, "to help you fill it with all the beauty you're going to create." She looked from the pen to his face, her heart full to bursting. It was the most thoughtful, most perfect gift anyone had ever given her. It was a gift that said, "I see you. I see your dreams. And I want to be a part of them." She didn't thank him with words. She stood on her toes and kissed him, a deep, lingering kiss that was a promise of all the chapters they had yet to write. Their relationship, once it was out in the open, was a source of endless fascination for the company and the city. But they didn't care. They were too busy building their world. They worked together seamlessly, a true partnership of equals. The Dubai Tower, built on her revolutionary design, became an architectural marvel, winning international awards and solidifying Sterling Enterprises' reputation as a leader in innovative, human-centric design. But their real project, the one that mattered most, was personal. He met her father, a kind, gentle man whose illness had stabilized, thanks to the best medical care Julian's resources could provide. He was shy at first, but when Julian started talking to him not as a CEO but as a man who loved his daughter, he slowly opened up, sharing stories and old photographs. She, in turn, began to navigate his world. She attended the stuffy charity galas, but on her own terms. She would charm the wealthy donors, not with flattery, but with her genuine passion for the social causes they were supporting. She became the most sought-after dinner guest in the city, not because she was Julian Sterling's partner, but because she was brilliant, funny, and utterly, refreshingly real. They were a team. They were partners. They were in love. One evening, about a year after the Dubai presentation, they were in the library of his mansion. He had given her free rein to redecorate it, and she had transformed the cold, formal space into a warm, cozy sanctuary, filled with comfortable armchairs and towering stacks of books. "I have a final proposal for you," he said, his voice a little nervous. "Oh? Does it involve another impossible deadline?" she teased, looking up from the book she was reading. "It's a lifetime contract," he said, getting down on one knee. He held out a simple, elegant ring, not a massive diamond, but a deep blue sapphire that matched the color of her eyes. "Maya Hayes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are the architect of my heart. You took the flawed, chaotic blueprint of my life and you redesigned it into something beautiful. Will you be my partner in life, in love, in everything, forever?" She was already crying happy, joyful tears. "Does the contract include a clause about who has to do the dishes?" she asked, laughing through her tears. "The contract is negotiable," he said, his own eyes shining, "but my love for you is not." "Then yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course, yes." The news of their engagement sent a predictable, yet manageable, tremor through the upper echelons of both the business and social worlds. There were whispers, of course. The story of the billionaire CEO and the former janitor was too juicy, too much of a real-life fairy tale to go unnoticed. The gossip columns had a field day, painting Maya as a cunning Cinderella and Julian as a man bewitched. But what they failed to understand was that the foundation of their relationship wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was a partnership forged in the crucible of a corporate crisis, built on a foundation of mutual respect. Julian, once a man who cared deeply about perception and control, now found that he simply didn't care what the world thought. His world had narrowed and paradoxically expanded to include only what truly mattered: Maya, her family, and the new, more meaningful life they were building together. He handled the gossip with a calm, dismissive grace that silenced even the most persistent reporters. When asked at a press conference about his unconventional choice of fiancée, he had simply smiled and said, "I didn't choose unconventionally. I just chose the most brilliant person I've ever met. The rest is just noise." The real challenge wasn't the outside world. It was merging their two very different lives. It was in the small, funny, and sometimes awkward details of everyday life. It was in him trying to understand why she insisted on keeping a small, chaotic herb garden on the balcony of his minimalist penthouse. It was in her trying to teach him that a Sunday afternoon spent doing nothing at all wasn't a waste of productivity, but a necessary act of soul maintenance. Her father, a quiet, gentle man named Miguel, was slowly regaining his strength. Julian had ensured he had the best care, but it was Maya's constant, loving presence that was the real medicine. Julian would often come home to find the two of them sitting on the couch, looking through old photo albums, Miguel's frail hand resting in hers. In those moments, Julian saw a side of Maya he hadn't seen before. Not the brilliant architect or the fierce defender, but the devoted, loving daughter. He would quietly retreat, feeling like an intruder on a sacred moment, his heart aching with a profound respect for the depth of her love. Planning the wedding became their next joint venture. Julian, true to form, initially tried to approach it like a corporate merger, with spreadsheets, timelines, and a team of high-priced event planners. "We need to consider the optics, the guest list, the brand synergy," he had said in their first wedding planning meeting. Maya had simply laughed, taken the tablet from his hands, and closed it. "Julian," she had said, her eyes full of a playful warmth, "a wedding is not a brand, it's a party, and we're going to plan a party that feels like us." So they fired the planners and did it themselves. The guest list was a chaotic, beautiful mix of their lives. His powerful business partners and board members would be seated next to her father's nurses, the librarian from her neighborhood, and the team from the cleaning crew she had once been a part of. The venue they chose was not a grand hotel ballroom, but the city's botanical garden, a place of natural, untamed beauty. "It's a place where things are allowed to grow in their own way," Maya had said. "It feels right." As the wedding day approached, Julian found himself letting go of his need for control in a way he never thought possible. He trusted her vision completely. He found joy in the small shared tasks, in tasting cakes, in choosing flowers, in arguing playfully over the color of the napkins. He was discovering that the process of building a life together was in these small, insignificant, and utterly wonderful details. The true test of his transformation, however, came from an unexpected quarter. 2 weeks before the wedding, Maya's father, Miguel, took a turn for the worse. An infection had set in, and he was rushed back to the hospital. The prognosis was grim. Maya was devastated. She spent every waking moment at the hospital, sitting by her father's bedside, holding his hand, reading to him from his favorite books of poetry. She canceled her final dress fitting. She postponed her meetings. Her entire world narrowed to the quiet, beeping reality of that hospital room. Julian was her rock. He handled everything. He rescheduled his own meetings, postponed his business trips. He made sure she had food to eat, that she had a comfortable place to rest at the hospital. He didn't offer empty platitudes or false hope. He just sat with her, in the long, silent hours, his quiet, steady presence a constant source of strength. One evening, as they sat together in the dim light of the hospital room, Miguel stirred. He opened his eyes and looked at them, his gaze weak but clear. "My Maya," he whispered, his voice a frail rustle. "You found a good man." "Yes, Papa," she said, her voice choked with tears. "I did." Miguel then looked at Julian. "You will take care of her?" he asked, his voice gaining a sliver of its old strength. "You will let her be who she is? You will not try to cage her?" "I promise," Julian said, his own voice thick with emotion. "I will spend my life trying to be worthy of her." Miguel seemed to smile. He closed his eyes and drifted back to sleep. He passed away peacefully 2 days later. The grief was a heavy, suffocating fog. The wedding, of course, was postponed indefinitely. Julian watched, his heart breaking, as Maya moved through the days in a daze of sorrow. She handled the funeral arrangements with a quiet, heartbreaking efficiency. She was strong, as she always was, but he could see the deep, profound pain in her eyes. He didn't know what to do. The logical, problem-solving part of his brain was useless here. There was no solution to this kind of pain. All he could do was be there. He held her when she cried. He listened when she needed to talk. He sat with her in the silence when she didn't. He learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is simply to bear witness to another person's pain without trying to fix it. A month after the funeral, they were sitting on the porch of her father's small, quiet house, which they had been slowly, carefully packing up. "We should cancel the wedding," she said, her voice flat, as she sorted through a box of old photographs. "It doesn't feel right, not now." "Okay," he said simply. She looked at him, surprised. "Just, okay? You're not going to argue? You're not going to try to convince me?" "No," he said, taking the box of photos from her and placing it on the table. "I'm going to listen to what you need. If you need to wait, we'll wait. If you need to cancel, we'll cancel. Your heart is what matters right now. Nothing else." She stared at him, and in that moment she felt a wave of love for him so powerful it was like the sun breaking through the clouds. He had truly, completely changed. The old Julian would have talked about deposits and schedules and the logistical nightmare of canceling. The new Julian was only concerned with her. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you so much." "I love you too," he said, pulling her into his arms. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other, the grief still present, but now mingled with a profound sense of love and security. 2 weeks later, she woke up one morning and the fog had started to lift. The deep, aching sadness was still there, but it was now accompanied by a faint, hopeful glimmer of light. She found him in the kitchen, making coffee. "Julian," she said. He turned, a look of gentle concern on his face. "Yes?" "I don't want to cancel the wedding," she said, her voice clear and strong for the first time in weeks. "I want to have it. I want to celebrate. Because that's what my father would have wanted. He would have wanted me to choose joy." A slow, beautiful smile spread across his face. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," she said. "But not in the botanical garden. I know the perfect place." Their wedding took place a month later, not in a grand public space, but in the quiet, intimate setting of the library in Julian's mansion, the place where he had first learned about her history and she had first learned about his. It was a small, private affair. Just them, Lily, and a handful of their closest family and friends. The room was filled with white candles and the scent of jasmine. Maya walked down the aisle on the arm of her father's oldest friend. She wore a simple, elegant ivory dress, and pinned to her bouquet was a small, silver locket containing a picture of her father. Julian watched her approach, his heart full. They had been through so much, suspicion, sabotage, grief, but they had come through it all, not broken, but stronger, their love tempered and tested and proven to be real. Their vows were simple, heartfelt, and full of the quiet wisdom they had learned from their journey. "You taught me that a home is not a building, but a feeling," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And you, Maya Hayes, are my home." "You taught me that love is not about finding a perfect person," she said, her voice a soft whisper. "It's about finding a person who is willing to build a perfect love with you, one day at a time." When they were pronounced husband and wife, the small room was filled with a joy that was both profound and deeply peaceful. It was not the end of their story. It was the beginning of their most beautiful chapter yet. Married life was a quiet revelation. For Julian, a man who had lived in a state of perpetual high-stakes motion, the stillness of domestic happiness was a foreign and deeply beautiful landscape. He discovered the simple, profound joy of waking up next to the woman he loved, of the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen, of the sound of Lily's laughter echoing through the hallways. The vast, sterile mansion, once a symbol of his isolation, was slowly but surely being transformed into a home, filled with the messy, unpredictable, and wonderful chaos of a real family. Maya, in turn, found a sense of peace and security she had never known. She was no longer just surviving, she was thriving. The constant gnawing anxiety that had been her companion for so long was replaced by a calm, steady confidence. She had a partner, a true partner, someone who not only supported her dreams but actively helped her build them. Their first project as a married couple was the official launch of the foundation they had envisioned. They didn't name it after themselves. They named it the Miguel Hayes Foundation for Applied Arts, in honor of her father. Its mission was simple, but powerful: to provide scholarships and mentorship to talented young people from underprivileged backgrounds who, like Maya, dreamed of a career in the arts and design but lacked the resources to pursue it. Julian brought his formidable business acumen to the foundation, ensuring it was run with efficiency and strategic vision. But it was Maya who was its heart and soul. She personally mentored the students, sharing not just her technical skills but her life lessons. She taught them about resilience, about the importance of finding beauty in unexpected places, and about the quiet power of a dream that refuses to die. They became a formidable team, a power couple, in the truest sense of the word. They were a fixture in the city's philanthropic scene, but they did it on their own terms. They would attend the stuffy charity galas, but they would always leave early to go home and read bedtime stories to Lily. They built a new kind of legacy, one that was measured not in stock prices, but in the lives they touched. Their family life was a beautiful blend of their two worlds. He taught her how to ski. She taught him how to salsa dance in the kitchen. He introduced her to the complexities of corporate finance. She introduced him to the simple joy of a Saturday afternoon spent flying a kite in the park. Lily was the joyful center of their universe, a happy, thriving little girl who now had two parents who adored her. About a year into their marriage, Maya found herself standing in the now famous library, a small, knowing smile on her face. Julian walked in carrying 2 cups of tea. "What's that look?" he asked, handing her a cup. "That's your I've discovered a secret look." "It is," she said, her eyes twinkling. "A new project, a 9-month collaboration with a very special launch date." She took his hand and placed it on her belly. He stared at her, his mind for once not processing the information. Then his eyes widened with a dawning, incredulous joy. Are we?" he stammered, his voice full of an awe she had never heard before. "Yes," she said, laughing through happy tears. "We are." He lifted her up and spun her around, his own laughter echoing through the quiet, book-lined room. The man who had once believed his heart was permanently closed off was now about to become a father again. His fortress had not just been breached, it had been completely and joyfully conquered. The 9 months that followed were a whirlwind of happy anticipation. Julian was a doting, almost comically overprotective, expectant father. He read every book on pregnancy. He insisted on accompanying her to every doctor's appointment. He would spend hours in the nursery they were designing, debating the precise, optimal shade of yellow for the walls. Maya watched him with a heart full of love. He was pouring all the care and attention he had been afraid to give for so long into this new life they were creating together. He was not just going to be a good father, he was going to be an extraordinary one. Their son, Daniel Miguel Sterling, was born on a crisp autumn morning. He had his mother's warm, intelligent eyes and his father's determined chin. Julian held him for the first time, tears streaming down his face, a man completely undone by the miracle of it all. Lily was an ecstatic big sister, immediately taking on the role of Daniel's official story reader and chief cuddle officer. Their family was complete. Their home was filled with the beautiful, chaotic symphony of a newborn's cries, a child's laughter, and the quiet, steady hum of a deep and abiding love. One evening, a few years later, They were sitting on the porch of their home, watching as a now 10-year-old Lily taught her little brother Daniel how to build a wobbly but ambitious tower of blocks. The sun was setting, painting the sky in the familiar beautiful shades of a Seattle evening. "Do you ever think about it?" Maya asked, leaning her head on Julian's shoulder. "How it all started?" "The whiteboard," he said with a smile. "The most important drawing of my life." "I was so terrified that night," she confessed. "I thought you were going to destroy me." "I was the one who was terrified," he admitted, pulling her closer. "You walked into my perfectly ordered world and showed me how beautiful chaos could be. You saved me from a life of sterile, lonely success." She smiled. "And you, Julian Sterling, you saved me from a life of quiet, unfulfilled dreams. You saw a masterpiece when all I saw was a mess." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play. The ghosts of their pasts were still there, not as haunting figures, but as gentle reminders of the journey they had taken. They were a testament to the fact that even the most broken of things, a heart, a dream, a company, could be redesigned, rebuilt, and made more beautiful and more resilient than before. A cool breeze rustled the leaves in the trees, and the first stars began to appear in the twilight sky. "You know," Julian said, his voice a soft murmur, "I've been thinking about the Dubai Tower." "Oh, thinking of building another one?" "No," he said, a slow, thoughtful smile on his face. "I was thinking about the atrium, the one you designed, the beating heart of the building." He turned to look at her, his eyes full of a love that was as deep and as constant as the stars above them. "You are the atrium of my life, Maya. You're the center of it all, the place where everything connects, where everything makes sense, where all the light comes in." She looked at him, her heart full. "That's the most architectural and the most romantic thing you have ever said." He laughed, a sound that was now as familiar and as comforting to her as her own heartbeat. "I've had a good teacher," he said, before leaning in to kiss her. A soft, sweet kiss that was a promise of 1,000 more sunsets, 1,000 more shared dreams, and a lifetime of building a beautiful, chaotic, and wonderfully real life together. Life settled into a rhythm that was a beautiful, chaotic melody. The years that followed were not a fairy tale ending, but a real-life continuation, filled with the ordinary, wonderful texture of a family built on love and a shared sense of purpose. Sterling Enterprises, with Maya and Julian at the helm as true partners, became a different kind of empire. It was still wildly successful, but its success was now measured not just in profits, but in the positive impact it had on the communities it touched. The Maya method, as it became known in business schools, a philosophy of leading with empathy and seeing the story behind the numbers, revolutionized their corporate culture. Their home, once a cold monument to wealth, was now a loud, joyful, and perpetually messy haven. Lily grew into a bright, compassionate teenager with her mother's artistic flair and her father's sharp mind. Daniel, their son, was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, a perfect fusion of Julian's quiet intensity and Maya's boundless spirit. The Miguel Hayes Foundation for Applied Arts became Maya's greatest passion project. It flourished, providing a lifeline for hundreds of young, talented individuals who had been overlooked by the world. She didn't just fund their dreams, she mentored them, fought for them, and celebrated their successes as if they were her own. Julian found a new identity, not as a ruthless CEO, but as a devoted husband, a present father, and a philanthropic leader. He discovered a joy in the simple things, in teaching Daniel how to ride a bike, in helping Lily with her history projects, in the quiet evenings spent with Maya, their comfortable silence a testament to a love that no longer needed words to be understood. One crisp autumn afternoon, about 10 years after their wedding, Julian was in the grand library of their home, the same room where they had been married. He was watching as their son, Daniel, now a bright-eyed 7-year-old, showed his mother a drawing he had made. "Look, Mama," Daniel said, his voice full of pride. "It's a skyscraper with a garden on top, just like the one you designed." Maya knelt down, her expression full of love. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. It's even better than mine." Watching them, Julian felt a wave of gratitude so profound it was almost overwhelming. This was his life. This was the beautiful, chaotic world they had built together. Later that evening, after the children were in bed, he found Maya in her old studio, which she still kept in a quiet corner of the house. She was sitting at her desk, sketching in the same worn-out notebook her father had given her all those years ago. "What are you working on?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Just an idea," she murmured, leaning back against him, "for a new community center. A place with an art studio for kids, a library, and a big, sunny kitchen." He smiled, kissing the top of her head. "It sounds perfect." "I was thinking," she said, turning in his arms to face him, "about that first day, in your office, when you were so angry." "Don't remind me," he said with a pained laugh. "I was an arrogant fool." "You were," she agreed with a playful smile. "But you were also the man who, even in your anger, saw something in a drawing on a whiteboard that no one else would have bothered to look at." "I was looking for a solution," he said. "No," she corrected gently, her hand coming up to cup his cheek. "You were looking for a story. You just didn't know it yet." He leaned into her touch, his heart full. She was right. He had spent his whole life searching for the right answers, only to discover that she had been the right question all along. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small, flat, velvet box from his pocket. It wasn't a ring. She opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of silk, was a single, exquisitely crafted silver marker, the kind used for whiteboards. Engraved on its side were a few simple words. "For the architect of my life, J." She looked from the marker to his face, her eyes shining with tears. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I thought," he said, his voice a low, loving rumble, "that we could use it to sketch out the next 50 years or so. I hear they're going to be filled with more chaos, more children, and a whole lot more love." She laughed, a sound that was still, after all these years, his favorite in the world. "I wouldn't have it any other way," she said. He kissed her then, a deep, lingering kiss that was a promise of a future that was not a perfectly straight line, but a beautiful, sprawling, and infinitely interesting design. A masterpiece they would continue to create, together, for the rest of their lives. The story of the janitor and the CEO had ended. The story of Julian and Maya was just beginning. What did you think of Julian and Maya's journey from a tense boardroom to a lifetime of love? On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate their story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And for everyone who has stayed with us to the end, who believes that the right person can help us redesign our entire lives, please comment with a simple heart of gold. We are so grateful to share these stories with you. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more narratives that will touch your soul.